All right, I'd like to get this meeting, October the 3rd meeting of the Union County Board of Commissioners to order. First of all, we'll start with the invocation. Please bow your head. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful weather we've been having. We pray that you'll be with the people that will be affected by Hurricane Matthew. We hope that the people on the coast of North and South Carolina will be okay. But also pray that you'll be with us as we do our business tonight and be with us as we make our decisions. In your name, pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we have employee recognition. We have no employee recognition this month. Okay, and then we got the Long-Term Care Residents' Rights Month, the 2016 proclamation. A little background: the Residents' Rights Month is an annual event designated by the Consumer Voice and celebrated in October to honor residents living in all long-term care facilities, including nursing homes, subacute units, assisted living, board and care, and retirement communities. It is an opportunity for every facility to focus on and celebrate awareness of dignity, respect, and value of each individual resident. This year's theme is My Vote Matters, which focuses on the right to vote and be engaged in political process. Consumers receiving long-term services and supports retain their voting rights, and regardless of where they live or what type of care they receive. Resident Rights Celebration in Union County will take place on Thursday, October the 13th, 2016 at the Ag Center from 2 o'clock p.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. This proclamation will be presented during that celebration. And I'd like to make the motion that we adopt the Long-Term Care Residents' Rights Month 2016 proclamation. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Next, we have the proclamation of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And Ashley Lenz, the Executive Director of Turning Point, is requesting that the Board adopt this proclamation to proclaim October 2016 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Union County. And you'll have a motion.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. And do we have someone here from Turning Point tonight? That would be Renee Callanan. Thank you very much for what you do. And on behalf of the board, we would like to present you with this proclamation.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have a public hearing.
Yes, Commissioners, there's a public hearing this evening on the property that is known as Allen Black Road property, and Brian Matthews will provide you with an overview.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. We have a conditional rezoning application here tonight, and this is a public hearing for that. With the board's pleasure, what I'd like to do is just give a brief synopsis of what the project is, then turn it over to the developer, his representative, for a presentation, and then I'll stand back up and give the staff recommendation on the project. Just to kind of give you an idea, this is a unique project because a lot of this property in the overall project's not within the county's zoning jurisdiction. So what you have here is a site, which is actually, this is the entire site. Not all of this is within the county's zoning jurisdiction, but this is all of the proposed project. There is an annexation request that's with the town of Stallings right now, as well as a rezoning petition for the largest portion of this project. And then that's just a closer view of the area there. And then ultimately what you have is the total project and this piece here, which is just the piece that is being requested by the developer that's in the county's zoning jurisdiction, just to give you a little bit of a closer view of that. That's approximately 4.8 acres. Now, you may be asking, well, why are we holding a public hearing on this particular piece when there's a much larger piece here, which is in the town of Stallings, and obviously that has a rezoning petition as well. Well, number one, we had expected there would be a decision by the town by now, but there hasn't been. There have been some additional requests and some delays. But a public hearing is not a vote, and we're certainly not suggesting that the board vote. Our recommendation is going to be that you hold your public hearing and that you wait and take your action after the town of Stallings has actually taken their action. And once we know when that has occurred, then we'll ask to have this put back on the agenda for you to take some kind of an action on. But tonight is really just a public hearing. The request is really for this 4.8 acres here. Now you notice, here's Allen Black Road here. There's a small piece here. This is actually in Mint Hill's jurisdiction. The line actually goes about right here as far as where the county boundary is. You can see a little bit better here. That's the county boundary line. This is Mint Hill's jurisdiction. This is unincorporated Union County. This is a request for annexation with the town of Stallings. The reason this cannot be annexed into the town of Stallings is because there's an annexation agreement between the town of Stallings and the town of Mint Hill, and that Mint Hill has exercised its right not to go along with an annexation request for this particular piece here. I can't answer why, but that's their purview, there's their authority. The developer will also have to secure in this area here approval for a connection to Allen Black for the subdivision, but that's through Mint Hill and their process. Currently, this portion of the property is zoned R20. That's approximately 2 units to the acre. They're requesting a CZR4, and that's mainly because of the lot sizes and the setbacks. They're requesting 25-foot front setbacks, 30-foot rear, I believe, and 7-foot side setbacks on their project. The yield on this particular area here is approximately 2.9 units per acre, but that is not the overall density. The overall density is just a little bit smaller than that. We estimate that under R20, approximately 9 units could be approved by right. They're requesting 14 on this particular project. And I'm going to turn this over to the developer and let him give his presentation, and then I'll give the staff recommendation from there.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you very much, fellow commissioners. I appreciate your time tonight. And looking at this consideration, Brian gave a very quick overview, and it is complicated because of this no annexation agreement. He mentioned that Mint Hill, they haven't denied a request. In fact, they did approve a notice of waiver, which is basically their ability to hold back the annexation, but they've chosen not to take any part of it, and therefore we've, with the developer's approval, have decided to keep that in unincorporated Union County. So I just want to give a brief, again, just touch on this. That's the no annexation agreement that's in place, and that's an enlargement of that. And that it's just very complicated. At one point, we drive into Union County, then back into Mecklenburg County, then back into Union County, and it's just because of the nature of how they've drawn this line back in 2001. And this agreement will be in place for several more years, and it just adds a layer of complexity. So that's part of why we're here tonight. This is the project timeline. Started back in April working on this, and Stallings, Union County joint community meeting where we had a lot of participants, a lot of good comments. We've went back and revised some things, and that's when this annexation agreement really truly became known, and that's when we had to go back to Mint Hill and ask for a waiver, which they then granted, and then we had to have a long notice period to get this back on track. But we're back on, and we've just had another community meeting last week in Stallings, and had some good turnout. Some folks still interested, but we don't anticipate many changes coming out of the plan. This is just an overall aerial to kind of show you the view of what's happening. There's a lot of residential development off of Lawyers Road and in the Stevens Mill Road area, and this is just a piece that's well positioned to be also developed for residential. In fact, it is in the long use area plan slated to be residential. This is just a quick view of another development that's up the road in Mint Hill that one day will happen, and these lots will be in close proximity to a larger development. Again, this is the overall plan. Lots of open space, lots of stormwater ponds. There's going to be some traffic improvements we're going to touch on here in a moment that are important. The previous plan actually showed a little bit denser. I'll back up and just show that to you here real quick. When we first brought this to the community, we were actually pursuing some townhomes in this area to provide a different product, but one of the comments was the community felt that that was a little dense, that they didn't want to see that product. So what we've done is we've changed those out, and that was the big change that folks wanted to see on the plan, so that we've provided it. Nothing has happened with the Union County piece, the piece that we're discussing tonight, but I just want to be able to share with you all of the things that are important about the plan. So these are the units that are in question tonight that we're talking about, the 14 units in Union County. And this is just a rendering that shows you the total development. So overall, the entire development is 176 total single-family homes. Got over 10 acres of open space, wooded areas, grassy areas, and over 6 areas of stormwater ponds. All that is important. And part of the other changes that were made were some bigger development commitments about making some 2 key access points and making one of them right in, right out to help with traffic, and that's on Lawyers Road. New right turn lanes on Lawyers and Allen Black. And then here's a big one. The developer's also willing to help solve one of the big traffic problems on Lawyers. I don't know if any of you all drive that road on occasion when you come off of 45 and you're heading south on Lawyers. There is some queuing and backup at the existing light at Stevens Mill and Lawyers, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. But the developer's willing to chip in $250,000 to put in a right turn lane, which we've studied, and know that will help to relieve some traffic. There is not any evidence of the DOT fixing this road anytime. The town is not planning on fixing this road anytime. So this is an existing problem that the developer sees that is an important thing to get right before some additional units are added. Sidewalks will be added. Building materials are limited here that you can see. I'm not going to read them all, but this will ensure that good product will be built on these homes. And then the setbacks, which we've discussed, are here. And then some stormwater improvements. And we're going to make some very important stormwater improvements that will help some localized ponding and flooding that happens in the Stevens Mill neighborhood. These ponds are going to be oversized to help capture stormwater in large storm events. So we've got, this is exactly what can happen on the left side with the proposed development. And just, the by right, we're not really sure what's going to happen. And certainly not sure of whether or not some of the open space or stormwater improvements could be made, or roadway improvements. The HOA covenants and restrictions, certainly no commitments there by right. And we've heard that the development, if this isn't able to move forward, that the owners of the property could do something else. I know that mobile home park is considered. They're looking at that right now. I do want to have Jake Carpenter come up with Raymond Kemp, who is our transportation consultant, just brief you on the transportation piece very quickly, and then we'll move on to some comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jake Carpenter with Ramey Kemp & Associates. I'm the traffic engineer for the project. Just a brief overview of the site here in relation to the Stevens Mill Road intersection. We have gone through the process of a TIA, and as a result of that, one of the big problems was the Stevens Mill Road intersection and processing traffic eastbound on Lawyers Road through that intersection. So what we came up with was a right turn lane at that location, and just the volume processed through that signal goes up by about 25% and helps to relieve the traffic pressure from the queue, the backup that starts on this approach and backs up all the way through the highway, the ramps, causing problems and queues on the ramps back down to the highway, and it's quite an improvement to traffic to add this turn lane. And just in the interest of, because how much of a concern this has been with the community and the traffic issues, we wanted to illustrate very quickly just a couple of videos of our traffic simulation that show the difference between when pre-development conditions in the future and post-development conditions in the future. Just as a quick illustration, I don't want to take too much of your time, but as you can see, this illustrates how the queue basically starts at the Stevens Mill Road intersection. The traffic can't get through this intersection in a timely manner, and so the queue starts here and builds through the network, causing the ramps to back up. And in the end, you can see the ramp intersections and how things build on both the southbound and northbound ramps. And so post-development conditions with the proposed turn lane, you can see how at the Stevens Mill Road intersection, and these simulations are at the exact same point in the peak hour, you can see how the queue is not building up from Lawyers Road from the signal here because of this turn lane right here. And it basically helps to process traffic through that signal, and you'll still see some queues as you are going to during any peak hour commute, but overall traffic is processed a lot more smoothly. You can see the ramp interchanges are not backing up, and it's a very significant improvement to the network, to an existing problem that is out there right now. So if there's additional questions as you move forward and through the public hearing, we'd be happy to expand on those.
Just a couple more points, and then we'll turn it back over to Brian. As we mentioned, stormwater is important. This represents the full watershed of our development area. Lots of water moves through this area. Stevens Mill was built many years ago before some of the current stormwater rules in effect. We have 5 discharge points through our community. There's a commitment on behalf of the developer, as I mentioned, to build larger stormwater ponds, and those are all shown here on the plan. And I'm not going to go over in significant detail, but you'll see here the requirement is to design to the 10 and the 25-year storm. These ponds will take up to the 100-year storm, and this is a percentage reduction in the amount of stormwater pre and post. So they're going well beyond the requirements to help solve a lot of key stormwater and ponding issues in the neighborhood. And they want to make these become beautiful ponds and amenities for the community, and committed to planting them and making them into beautiful aspects of the neighborhood. Another piece that's going to be expanded is some county sewer. Over 1,500 linear feet of sewer line is going to be built and shouldered by the developer to put in a new gravity system. Stevens Mill currently uses 2 pump stations to push their sewer uphill. There's a new sewer line that has already been built, and this is the future connection that will reconnect Stevens Mill, take off line and decommission one of the pump stations and make this a gravity line, which is another benefit to the community and the development. Just a point on schools, we studied the Union County's demographic study, and just know that Fairview Elementary and Porter Ridge Middle, Porter Ridge High School, as well as Piedmont Middle and High School are all potential schools to be affected. We study these numbers and know that there's capacity. Also considering the fact that several new charter schools have been opened to help relieve the elementary and middle school numbers, as well as the potential future bond that's in place to help build new classroom space at Piedmont. We believe that the number of homes being built are not going to push this above the watch or the cap necessarily, and know that there's certainly going to be room in these schools. Just touch on planting along Lawyers. There's a commitment to build some berming and beautify the roadway, also with entrance signage. The developer also wants to make sure that amenities are a part of the community and are committed to building open space, passive open space, and build. This is an example of the type of structure they would put in as a park on the frontage of Allen Black. And we'll just let the developer come and tell you a little bit about Ryan Homes.
Hi, I'm Kevin Connery with Ryan Homes. I'll be responsible for the home building operations in the community. Just real quick about Ryan Homes, been around for 70 years, founded up in Pennsylvania in 1948. We build currently in 14 different states up and down the East Coast, 27 markets, and well represented here in Charlotte. We've got over 20 communities and have been in the area since the late 70s. So we're very, very excited about this project and partnering with local municipalities in the county. So with that, we will turn it over to any questions.
Do I have a question?
I just want to go back, just so you can kind of see what we've got here. Ultimately, the staff reviewed this, planning board reviewed this. There were favorable recommendations from both the planning board and staff on this project. It is small in our portion of it. There's a much larger impact from the town of Stallings, but obviously that's their decision. But we think that, number one, it fits within our comprehensive plan. We do call for this to be a mixed use residential, which does allow for a little bit denser as far as residential. This is not significantly dense in the increase request. It's R20 as it is, so it would be a little bit less than 3 units to the acre. That's not significantly dense when it comes to our mixed use category. Also, there's some improvements that are being suggested by or actually agreed to by the developer that will have some significant impacts as well. The road improvements, number one, which aren't actually required per the TIA for their project. That was just something that the developer felt would help traffic in general. Also, with the pump station going offline, I know that is also a benefit the public works sees as well. So again, we are only suggesting that this is a public hearing tonight. Stallings will have their public hearing and their decision, and once they do, then we'll suggest a time to have this come back to the board for a decision, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about the project.
Any questions?
All right.
We're ready to hear from our public. Okay. Get the lights back on. Okay. First we have to speak is Vicki Kidd.
Good afternoon. I'm the property owner, my husband and I, of the parcel that fronts Allen Black Road, where the main entrance would be. And my parents owned this property initially. They lived there for over 46 years, and after they passed away, we rented it, and then we began looking at options of, because we live out in the Mooresville area, which is quite a distance to deal with rental property. So we began looking at selling the property, and as part of that, I'm a real estate broker. I own Kidd Realty, a real estate company in Mooresville, and so I talked with some of the owners of the property that joins it, and that's how the reason it wound up being the shape that it is. The property to the right of this entrance and to the left are actually family members, but years ago, during the time my parents were still alive, we were approached by Myers Chapman, some others, on doing a commercial development here. And that never happened, but the prices are still in people's minds. So the relatives were not part of this because of prices. But when I did finally put the entire tract together, I decided to try to approach some developers that I knew built a good product. And so Ryan Homes was one of those developers. And we do sell, there's a lot of developments around in Mooresville by Ryan Homes, and as I said, they build a good product and they sell well. So when I approached them, they were interested. They knew going in it would be kind of complicated. I talked with Brian Matthews and Mint Hill about the best way to go forward. So that's the way that we got to, the property got to be the shape that it is, and going through the process. As part of this, we've, as they stated, we've had other community meetings and tried to answer a lot of questions by the public, some of which were, concerned about the density. But when I started looking at the overall track, I looked at the adopted plan by Mint Hill, and it shows Allen Black Road, where the entrance of this property will be. On the opposite side of that road is mixed use with, and it will have, like in the plan it shows, because of the mall that's planned there, they have a hotel and institutional and a lot of commercial along that stretch of the Allen Black Road. So I felt like when they came up with this plan of this level of density, I felt like it was a good fit. You know, it runs right along the interstate. So that's kind of the history of where we got to this point. And the sellers, there is a total of 14 sellers. And besides my husband and I, there's 2 others here tonight. The others are much older folks, and they couldn't come out, couldn't be a part of this. But they are very interested in selling. They're hoping that that you will approve this development, of course, so they can move on. And as far as the developers go, I feel like Ryan Homes has really done an excellent job of trying to answer questions and concerns with the public. They've made a lot of changes, and they're offering a lot of benefits, and especially with the traffic study that they did. As I don't know if that was mentioned, but a traffic study was not required with these number of homes, but they were willing to do that, and the results. And I looked at the transportation improvement project that North Carolina had, and I even talked to them, and they said that even though this intersection had been studied, there was nothing in the transportation plan, which goes from 2016 to 2025. So there's no improvements plan for this intersection. So I do think that this would be a huge improvement for not just Stevens Mill and the community, but further out to Emerald Lake and some of the other subdivisions. But so I just wanted to say that I'm speaking in support of the project, along with the 14 sellers that's part of this. But thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have, and apologize if I get this wrong, I think it's Career Gun. Was that close? Okay.
My name's Kyra Gunn.
Kyra, okay.
I live at 1513 Union Road. My husband and I are owners of one of the parcels in this proposal, and I'm obviously speaking in support of the plan. But I also want to say that I'm a school teacher in Union County, a 21-year veteran of North Carolina Public Schools, so I'm extremely invested in our community. And we do want to sell, and we would like to, but when we leave it behind, our 18 acres that we've lived and paid taxes on and loved, we want to make sure that we're leaving it we want to leave a nice place for our community. We have friends there in that area, and we have students in that area, and we feel good about the proposal that Ryan Homes has put together. We like that the schools that are there are some of the few schools in the area that are under capacity. I'm friends with the Fairview Elementary principal, who's confirmed that they had 6 underutilized classrooms last year, unused classrooms last year. I also went around I do all my shopping at the Stevens Mill Shopping Center, and so I talked to some of the local business owners there as well and showed them the plan and asked them what they thought about it. So, because we wanted to make sure that it was something that would be beneficial, and of course, obviously, the local businesses were in support of it, and I also have a little petition signed by some of the business owners and managers of the people in the Stevens Mill Shopping Center there as well. So I just also wanted to mention that we're very pleased that the conditional zoning would benefit everybody in the community, with the traffic being improved, the sewer being improved, and the I'm sure there's something else, but I'm nervous and I've forgotten, and some of the other improvements that will go along with it. So thank you very much for considering the proposal.
Okay. I think if you'd like to give that to Michelle. And next we have Kent Gunn.
Well, I'll say ditto. That's my wife for the most part. But I would like to say that, it was a big decision for me to sell this property. I didn't really buy it as an investment property, but progress in the area was inevitable. And Ryan Homes has made the commitment, it looks to me like, to do everything they possibly could to satisfy every community in the area, the traffic problems that pre-existing, drainage problems, and I think the development looks pretty nice. And most of my land will be green space and watershed ponds, So I'm very pleased. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have anyone else signed up to speak. So with that, we'll close the public hearing. And next we go to informal comments, and we have none. So we go to additions, deletions, and our adoption of the agenda. Anybody want to make a motion on the
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay. Motion been made to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Next, we have the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, that brings us to old business.
Commissioners, at your last meeting, September 19th, there was a request by the board that staff present an overview of the 3 different bond referendums which will be on the ballot in November, to include what the potential tax implications are should those bonds pass. And Mr. Yates will give you an overview of that and then respond to any questions that you all may have.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Manager. What we have for you tonight, we want to talk about, just generally brief you on the concept of general obligation bonds. I know we've talked about this, but it's been a while. How they're authorized, what does that mean, how they would be expended, or how they get used, and then some of the fiscal impact of the upcoming referendums. And keeping in mind this November, we're talking about November 8th, and there are actually 3 different questions on the ballot. So just for everyone at home and for you as a refresher, general obligation bonds represent that full faith and credit of the government. Basically what the county would be pledging at that point, you as a board would be pledging your taxing authority to those bondholders. We consider this the highest level of credit that a local government can provide, whether it's municipal or county. And keeping in mind we're a AAA credit, so we would be the highest form of that credit that is out there. And the reason why bondholders prefer this, or why it's considered gold-plated or platinum, is that you actually provide to them your taxing authority in exchange for that borrowing that money, so they have the ability to come in and be able to raise those taxes. And as you know, you can compel a resident to pay taxes. So this is the most secure form of debt that is out there. General obligation bond referendum, if successful, authorizes the county commission to use those GO bonds. In the general statute, the concept is that because it pledges that tax rate ability, that the General Assembly wanted that requirement for the voters to actually vote on that. Keeping in mind that the referendum is an authorization, not a requirement of the board to issue that debt or even use that debt. If it's authorized by the voters, the proceeds can only be used for the bond questions. So generally, what that would be in some cases, or in the past, it's been a much more general question. This time it's very specific to the, I believe it's 6 schools. For the UCPS bonds, it's for the specific SBCC projects and for the library. So the bond proceeds can only be used for those projects. The funding, however, is appropriated just like any other capital project. So kind of the process, the way that it would work is that through the normal capital project process, whether it's the schools, SPCC, or the library project, it would come back to you as part of that budget process, not separate, not compelled by the referendum, but in due time along with the other projects. And then you as a board have that decision-making authority under that normal process then to appropriate the funds as you determine appropriate. So in that case, then what you would do, just like right now where we appropriate projects and we assign a funding source to that project, the GO bonds would then become a funding source that would be available for use in those projects. However, you as a board aren't compelled by that referendum. You're just authorized by that. The other piece of this that's really important, and I want to have a graph that I'll show you in just a second why it's important, but cash flow planning then becomes a major part of that process. And I put on here it's a partnership because it really is a partnership with the community college, with the school system, even with the library staff and our public works folks, when we start to go to build the buildings, to understand how they intend to spend that money. Because how we intend to spend that money, as you know, we're dealing with our utility, has a great impact on how we need to borrow money going forward. So keeping in mind, kind of just reiterate, the board will go through that process as you would. The school board or SBCC or the manager will make a request for the project. Then you as a board will vote on each of those individual projects funded by the GO bonds. In your capital improvement program management policy that was adopted in November of 2012, this is a statement taken directly out of that. It's anticipated that any of that new GO debt, whether that be they voted on through this referendum or 2/3 debt, which you as a board have decided not to exercise in the past, that as it's voted on by the taxpayers, it's assumed then that the taxpayers understand and are approving in that case that the tax rate that goes with that. And in fact, in the ballot language, beyond the detail that's listed around the projects, it actually says something to the effect that approves all the cost to pay, the necessary tax rate to pay for the interest and cost related to this debt going forward. So in your policy, and again, policy, it's your policy, it's not general statute, but in your policy, what it tells us is that if the voters approve that debt, then they are also approving that tax rate to go with it, with the expectation then that as we bring on the debt, there would be a tax rate increase necessary then to cover that debt. And the reason why we do that and why that's part of your policy, and I believe Commissioner Simpson, you were the only one on the board at that time.
Right.
When we put this policy in place, the idea was that you don't want to bring on a lot of debt and then take away from your operations or take money away from other areas of government that need that funding in order to fund new debt service that was approved then by the voters. So there should be, and there is some expectation, I believe, on the voters' side that as they approve that, and I believe all the campaigns I've seen even allude to this, that they are taking on that additional cost with that project. Not an expectation that the operations or other factors will just absorb that increased cost back in. Because as we found out over the last few years, as the county grows, we do have needs that grow along with that just operationally. So as we were looking at this, and this is the basis for all the fiscal impact we've provided to you. This is not an unfamiliar concept from the planning perspective. If you remember back, and I'm going to relate this to your utility, when we set utility rates, we try to smooth the utility rate out over a 3 or 5 year period such that it's not climbing steeply or not whipsawing in a jagged motion, in a jagged form. What we're trying to do is find a nice level rate that maintains its level position for a while. So if you were looking at this, and this assumes all the referendums pass and all the cash flow needs are as we anticipate, so there's a lot of assumption in this. But if you can look, the navy blue or the highest peak year is if you issued your tax rate or you brought your tax rate on in just-in-time fashion or just as that debt service came on, your peak year would be just over 4 cents, 4.7 cents or 4.07 cents. And then as you can see from there, it would start to decline. And that's because in North Carolina, they require you to do a declining debt service, not a level debt service. So you could see then that you would start at the 4 cents and it would decline all the way out through 2039 where it would be eventually paid off. However, if we plan and put in a tax rate slightly earlier, in this case, assuming the referendums are successful, 2018, your peak year then is only 3.13 cents. So we save just under a penny in that tax rate, and you can see then that those tax rates equalize back together in 2029. So what we're doing essentially is cutting that peak off by collecting taxes a little early. What we would do is essentially escrow those funds for a future debt payment and would pay that down over time. And what this allows us to do then is to ensure then that for the taxpayer that there's consistency across that rate for those years. As you can see, we kind of had that leveled out through the first 5 or 6 years of that program. So the debt rate in this case would remain level. We're able to keep it down by about a penny over that same time frame. If you were to add them all together and do the analysis over that entire window, there's not a ton of difference. It's minimal difference between the two, but where it does matter is that early on in that process, where you've taken on the debt and you're going through the construction process and everything else, you've kept that rate as low as possible versus having that huge spike or that high spike in the 2020 time frame. So looking at the different projects, you have about $10.1 million in the referendum for the library. The fiscal impact of that is about 0.28 cents for the debt service, annual debt service, and you can see that would come on. We'd issue the debt in about 2020 time frame, but through building up some balance, we'd be able to keep that rate low. One thing I will point out, all of these fiscal impacts are based on the estimated debt cost. These do not cover the operational values because we don't know what that cost will be until we have an idea what that facility will look like. The SBCC projects, you're looking at $40.2 million, about 1.25 cents through 2024, and then it starts to decline. And again, these feed this table, so you'll see all of the debt service costs start to decline in that 2026, 27 time frame. And then the UCPS projects, just a little over 54 million, and you'll see that that's about a 1.6 cent impact. And I will say that you'll see the stair step from 19 to 20 in the debt service. Our anticipation is that the schools we would not have to issue all of those bonds at one time. We'd be able to split that issuance up over a couple of years. And in fact, you see it also in the SBCC. So again, with construction, what we're allowed to do is, once it's appropriated, work with those two entities to ensure that as they need it, there's funding available, but then we don't have to go out and issue debt. So we go through a similar process with our utility where we try to manage our cash efficiently so we're not borrowing ahead, but continually replenishing and saving the borrowing cost in that process. I wanted to just, again, do a quick briefing for this and just answer any questions you have. So that's pretty much all I have for this evening. Do you have any questions for me? We also have representatives from the school system as well as SBCC are here.
Any of you have any questions for Jeff? Commissioner Jerry Simmons?
I really have a question, Jeff. Just appreciate you taking the time to put this together. I think in terms of transparency, to make sure the taxpayers know what they're looking at, and you did a good job.
Thank you.
Commissioner Richard?
And I'm assuming what I heard you say is that the bond passage, the associated tax increase would be levied based on your schedule here.
It would be our anticipation, unless the manager has other thoughts, that come in 2018, if the bond passed, that we'd go ahead and start to levy that tax rate and then work with the school system and obviously our own staff and with SBCC to plan the cash flow piece. But I think it's imperative to take that tax rate early to be able to keep that tax rate as low as possible, because I'd rather be able to start to lower it earlier in the schedule than to have to continually raise it. So the goal would be to set it as high as we needed to early on in that process.
Any other questions? As the bifurcated process, so would that tax rate for the school system be on their part of the bifurcated process, or how would that work?
We have talked a little bit. My goal would be to have the GO debt broken out separately and listed separately, because over time what we would hope to do is draw down that tax rate and start to, as it glides out over this time frame. I haven't talked to John, so I'm not sure how much space we have left on the bill, to be real honest, but we will figure out a clear way to show through the documents, either on the tax bill, some of the space we have there, or some other method, clearly what's related to the GO bond and separate and above what's related to operations and the existing current structure, because I think it's important, if the voters vote for it, to be able to see clearly what that debt tax rate is.
So you would try to get a separate line altogether, or for all these bonds?
I would like to see that. I haven't had a chance to talk about it with John. I think we were just kind of waiting to see what happened. We have a little bit of time to plan for that because it wouldn't be until this time next year that you'd be seeing that on the bill. So I think we have a little bit of work to do to figure that out. Plus with the new tax system coming on and different things, there's a little bit of unknown with that as far as that goes. So, but we would figure out, even if it's not on the tax bill broken out, all of our documentation will show it separately, budget it separately, and it'll be clearly seen. It doesn't. Tax bill is not the only way to share that information, so we would be sure that it's clearly transparent as to where that money goes.
All right. Anybody else have a question? All right, thank you for your presentation. Anybody have any questions for anybody from the school system like to make a comment or have any words? And welcome to y'all here tonight. And is this your first meeting? Will you come up and introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name is Drew Houlihan. I'm the new superintendent in Union County Public Schools. So thank you for the invitation to be here this evening, and I look forward to working with each of you.
Yeah, thank you, and we're glad to have you here tonight, and we appreciate the superintendent of schools being here, and as well as the school board members and your staff.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the UCPS roofing bids, item number 16.
Yes, Commissioners, this was on your last agenda, and it was pulled at that point in time and placed on this evening's agenda. The request is from Union County Public Schools on funding flexibility on 2 roofing projects. The request is to transfer $18,152 from Kensington Elementary School, leaving a balance of $160,207 for Kensington, and the 2 projects we would be transferring to are Wolf Elementary School in the amount of $13,098 and to Prospect Elementary School in the amount of $5,054. As I indicated to you at your last meeting, these projects are just a little bit different than when you normally see these. My understanding is these change orders have already taken place because conditions were found at the site during construction. And looking at the background material in the agenda item, the explanation on Prospect Elementary was the additional costs were due to a metal wall panels as well as skylights, and on the Wolf School it was location of utilities, removal of some poor soils that they had, as well as repairs to their stormwater system.
All right. How you doing, Melissa?
I'm doing great. How are
Yeah,
you?
Melissa Merrill, the chairman of the Facilities Committee with schools, and tell us what you got.
Well, Manager Cotto covered it pretty well. We had a $5,054 change order at Prospect that was primarily an issue when they started doing work on the roof. There were problems around the skylights, and then they had to go inside and do some painting. So we have 3 change orders that totaled $5,054, and because the roofing was in process, we couldn't stop the project, and so we used a contingency fund in the facilities to keep the project going, and we paid the $5,000 with the understanding that we would come here, and we mentioned it a month ago at our facilities meeting, and I think it was taken off your consent 2 weeks ago. So we're here to talk to you about these change orders. That one was for Prospect, and then the Wolf School. As you've already been told, there were, when the delivery trucks were in the back of the parking lot, there was some sinking, and come to find out there was stormwater drainage issues in the back of that parking lot. So when the heavy equipment was arriving to do work on the roofing projects, it began to sink. And so there are also 3 change orders at the Wolf School totaling $13,098, and the subcontractor actually paid almost $10,000 out of their own pocket to help pay for that. But our portion was $13,098 at Wolf to redo that parking lot.
Anybody have any questions? Commissioner Holmes?
You made a comment that you use funds out of a contingency fund.
Right. I received that information today from staff that they used a contingency fund. Dr. Delaney is welcome to join me up here if you want to give more information. But because the roofs were ripped off and in the process of materials being delivered, we just kept moving instead of putting everything on hold with the roof removed, and we used funds from a contingency to keep the ball rolling and not have any delays.
Thank you. Glad to be here. We do. We have an unlisted contingency fund on all roofing projects, which is standard practice for construction of roofing. We also have contingencies on new construction, but that's actually part of the bid process. We take a certain portion of the funds that are allocated for the entire roofing projects to be sure we can cover them. If we do not cover them, we go further down the list on the approved roofing projects and take funds from there to backfill on, specifically on these two projects, Wolf School and the Prospect Elementary.
So the 18,000 is to replace contingency funds instead of actually paying for the projects.
We've already paid for them.
That's what I just said.
Yes, yes, that's correct. Sorry.
What's the balance in that contingency fund?
I cannot answer that because I don't know.
Any idea what was left over from the other roofing projects?
Well, we go down that list. The Facilities Committee approves it in order. And we are always, any contingency we have to use, we will go to the next roofing project if we have to, or we'll negotiate with the contractor to pay for it.
Well, I guess my question is, we've gone through a lot of roofing projects and we moved a lot of money. This is the first I've heard of a contingency fund. So I guess my question is, what's the balance and where's the money from those roofing projects that were under budget?
It goes to the next project.
And again, any idea what that balance is in the contingency fund?
No, but I can tell you exactly once we go through it. And we don't share that with the contractor because typically in these kinds of, in roofing contracts, they will find out what a contingency is and spend to it.
But we're pulling money from Kensington.
Correct.
But you have a contingency fund balance that could be used to make sure that Kensington was made whole, potentially.
Well, potentially, because we would go to the next school for a contingency. For instance, if Kensington, when we go to Kensington, if it goes over and we have to have a contingency, we'd use the next school roofing project for the contingency. We wouldn't go outside of the roofing funds that the county commission has already approved. We just wouldn't cherry pick money from another source.
But I believe, I don't recall the exact number, but is it $30 million in roofing over the last few years?
It's in that neighborhood, 30, 36.
Approximately, yes. And we actually have more roofs to complete this year.
So it goes back, we've moved a lot of money from project to project. We understand that there's certain projects that are going to be moved back on the list. But this is the first time I've heard of contingency fund on 30-some million in roofing. So I would ask again, before I can approve it, what is the balance in that contingency fund?
We don't have a contingency fund. We go to the next roofing project, and that's the contingency fund we use. There's not a stash of contingency fund money. If we've done 3 roofs and we're on the 4th, and we're over budget, we would go to the 5th project for any contingencies to pay for it. And actually, last year, we had to carry over a project to this year because we didn't have enough funds.
But if the 3 projects prior to the 4th were on budget, wouldn't there be contingency funds available from those other 3?
There could be. There could be.
But we don't know if there is any. It was carried forward to the next.
If we were under budget on the first 3 projects, it would go to the next project.
Which would have already been allocated by the county, correct?
Exactly.
So if that one finished under budget, there could potentially be funds available.
There could be, yes. It's possible. And if we didn't run into these kinds of situations, we would probably always be slightly ahead of the game. But as soon as you hit one, as you can see, it comes up to $18,000.
And something at our meeting last week, our facilities meeting last Tuesday, we received bids. When I came to you last year, unfortunately, last year at this time, we were taking money from East Elementary. Well, now East Elementary is actually up, and we have received bids, and we discussed that at our Tuesday meeting, and it came in under budget. So, and I believe that's in the neighborhood of $132,000. So that's going to give us, some room to put towards Kensington or these type of change orders. So when Dr. Delaney is telling you that we have a contingency fund or the third project in line or the fourth project in line, East Elementary, we were informed just last Tuesday, was under budget.
So potentially you could use what you're under budget there to keep Kensington whole.
That's correct.
And not require us to move the funds.
No, the $132 is not going to completely backfill what we've borrowed from Kensington, but it's going to be substantial. Right now, we have a little over $160,000 remaining in Kensington, and now we've got an additional $130,000 savings from East, and we got that information just last week.
And what was the total budget for Kensington?
I do not have that.
82. Not positive. We can get you. I don't want to guess.
I do not have Kensington's information in front of me.
I think, and so my understanding of this is there's not, let's say we had 10 schools, $100,000 bid for roofing each. There's not a, $5,000 contingency fund for each one, right?
Not that I'm aware
It's
of.
just a big, there's just, if you save money, it's in there. If you lose money, it comes out.
Exactly.
And I will also say, I have served on facilities now for 2 years, and in construction, there's always overages. And in 2 years, this is the first time, we've had change order issues. And this is the first time I've had to come before you, with a $5,000 change order or a $13,000 change order. So I think in the grand scheme of $30 million of roofing projects, a $13,000 change order and a $5,000 change order, and we've never had to discuss this the 2 years I've served on the board. That's not a bad ratio.
The pipes or where you had the stormwater, is there any geothermal pipes there that heat and cool that school, or is that something that was involved in this? None of that?
No, not at all. And it wasn't a latent deficiency. It wasn't something that had always been there, right, that either we or the contractor from the last project could have discovered. It was just one of those things.
Okay. Is it dirt or paved or?
Both. And that's why when the trucks came in, it sank.
Right. Okay.
If I might, Chairman, and maybe I'm beating a horse, but I'm going to put it in a little different terms, and maybe it'll add some clarification, maybe it won't. But I assume what you do is you take your roofing budget for a particular school, you deduct a percentage from that total school budget for that roofing project, and that's what you use as your contingency. It's not additional funds, it's part of that budget. Okay.
Or carry over from the previous one. Okay. Yes. But there's not a contingency pot.
And again, we haven't had other change orders. These are the first two that I've experienced, and that's how we had to handle it this particular time. And fortunately, East came in under budget.
What, at the end of the fiscal year, if you have projects that come in under budget, what happens to that contingency fund that's there, the availability of funds?
I'm sorry, could you?
If your total projects come in under budget at the end of the fiscal year, what happens to the funds that you set aside as contingency?
We would use it for any future capital improvement projects.
Is that included in the budget documents you send us each year?
Yes, if we have,
It's monthly.
if we have a carryover fund balance, it has to be.
What we do is, and Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong, we have a budget for each school roofing project, and it's completely on a reimbursement basis. They cannot exceed that amount without coming to the board and getting an authorization to move monies from another school. In kind, if they have an excess, and I think there were 2 last year that came in under budget, that we were actually able to use monies from them coming in under budget and applying them to a school that came in over budget, and that also came before the Board of County Commissioners. So during your budget process, we do a balancing act of all of the monies that have been moved around during that fiscal year so that you understand what was originally appropriated for that school, what was actually spent, what was left over, and where those monies may have gone or monies that still may remain that could be applied to other projects. Is that accurate? Okay.
And I think we report to you each month a statement of where we are. So I think every month we're supplying that information where we are to the county.
Any more questions? All right, thank y'all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody want to make a motion? I make the motion to amend the 2016 capital budget for schools by transferring the following: $18,152 from Kensington Elementary School roofing project to Wolf Elementary School. Wolf School, it's not Wolf Elementary, right? It's Wolf School. And Prospect Elementary School roofing projects, approved capital project ordinance CPO number 190. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
1. Okay, next we are at item number 17.
At your June 20th commission meeting, staff made a presentation as it related to our 911 communications and some discussions that had occurred during a budget adoption as to whether or not the 911 communication should remain under the county manager or should be transferred to the sheriff's office. At that point in time, we made a commitment to you that we would come back to you with an update. I think we provided with was it a 4-month? 3-month 90-day timeline. We were at that 90-day timeline. Michelle Lancaster, the assistant manager, has been working on this project, and she is going to provide you an overview as to where we are and also present some actions we would like for you to consider this evening.
Ms. Cotto. This will be a brief update, and then I, as well as the sheriff is here, and Larry Brinker, who is responsible for 911 communications. We've worked very closely on this process. We're all three available to take any questions that you might have at the end. This is just a brief recap of information that had already been provided to you that goes over the staffing, the budget, and some of the issues that we knew were present when this became an issue back in June. And as Ms. Cotto said, we've spent 90 days working to identify issues and solutions, and I'm going to go through these in kind of these 3 categories or buckets, if you will. First off, one of the things that we wanted to focus some time on were our staffing issues. I met personally with each employee of the 911 center and spent as much time as they wanted or as little time as they wanted talking about any issues that they had from an internal perspective. And one of the things that we realized pretty early, and that I think that you all were aware of too because you approved 2 additional staff positions in the budget for 911, is that there was some need to recruit and fill vacancies and add additional staff to 911 based on the call volume and the workload that they have. And so we have spent a lot of time with HR working on that and have developed a new approach to recruiting that has really been a partnership of Larry and Sharon Crook, who is the operations manager of 911, Mark Watson and his staff in HR. and developing a new process that we think will eliminate about a week or two's time process in the recruiting, where we were doing some things on computers that had to bring people into the office. We're going to start using an online module that will cut down that time, that will give us some better information, we think, on identifying potential employees who will be long-lasting employees, because it's not only the hiring of staff, but it's the retention of staff in 911 that is an issue. Our retention rate is higher than the national average currently. The national average for positions of this type is about 19%. The last 2 years we've been close to that, a little bit higher, in the low 20 range. This past year, though, we are at 30%, 30+% of turnover. And so we know that we've got to do some things differently in order to get the right people in the seats and doing the work that we need them to do in 911. One of the things that we have worked to do is looked at a training coordinator position. This is something that the staff, Larry and Sharon in particular, felt strongly about. They worked on a proposal to use some funds that had already been provided to them in their budget so that this would not require any additional funding. So one of the things we're asking for tonight is the approval of a training coordinator position. This would be a staff person who does exactly what it sounds like it would do, coordinates training efforts for the 911 staff. Currently, the way that is managed is with a current staff person, a supervisor, or a team of supervisors who work on putting together training materials. We think this is a good addition to that staff that will really focus on training and making sure that everybody's trained consistently and that we're getting a good product every time we answer that 911 call. Additionally, one of the things that was developed with staff and with HR staff is a unique recruiting event. This is something that we have not done here before, but next Monday from 2 to 7 at the Monroe Mall, we're going to have an open recruiting for 911 positions. And this is something that came about really from a group of people getting together and just thinking outside the box of how can we get additional staff that we think would be really good for this organization. And so we're excited to see how that works, and we plan to do that on a quarterly basis based on the feedback that we get. And they're using some of the sheriff's vehicles. They're going to do interviews, talk to people, and really do some creative things to see if we can get additional staff. Additionally, one of the actions that I'm asking for tonight is the approval of 4 positions that we are calling overhire positions. Some of the things that have become obvious are how we use on-call staff, allowing for training of staff, sick time, vacation time, and making sure that we always have good people ready to fill in those spots. And so we think that this is something, if we could do this for the next 18 to 24 months, that we'll really see some change in the retention of our staff. And so that's one of our asks. Excuse me. The next thing that we looked at were facilities. And this is one of the things that we identified early on, is that we needed to do something with our staffing space. So we have worked with our facility staff to look at short-term and long-term solutions. We've identified a couple that we're still continuing to massage, and you'll be hearing more about those in the coming months. Additionally, the RFP is going to be issued for the Sheriff's Office Space Study. You'll recall that you provided $80,000 in the budget for that, and that also includes looking at the facility, the emergency services facility, in that process. So we hope to have those back in mid-November, and that will continue. We will continue to work on that part. The last area that we looked at were the internal and external relationships, and I talked about meeting with staff and really focusing on the things that staff needed. And additionally, we've worked with all of the user groups, law enforcement, fire, and EMS, and we will also begin to place an extensive focus on fire after we go through our hiring event next week. We've really worked mostly with law enforcement and looking at our protocols, and had to place a priority on those because of the staffing issues and the protocol issues that you were already aware of. Based on all the work that we have, we really do have a lot of good news, and I want to thank the staff who are here because they've played the biggest part in this. We have seen a 14% reduction in the call received at dispatch time when you look at the last 30 days compared to May of 2016. And we've also had a recent Wesley Chapel ISO rating visit where our numbers, we went from a 8.6 out of 10 in the 911 center to a 9.1. And that's just since March of 2016. So we know that we've done some good work there. And the other thing is really that everybody's working as a team, working on the same goals, working toward great service. The next steps that we want to continue with are really just working on all the issues that have been identified, working on the new hiring process, and hopefully getting this overhire complement identified, fully fleshed out by the end of the calendar year. So the recommendation that I bring to you tonight is maintaining the 911 Communications Center under the county manager structure, approving one full-time equivalent position and add the following job classification and associated pay grade to the county pay and classification plan, that's the training coordinator, and approving the 4 full-time equivalent telecommunicator positions to be utilized as overhire positions in the future. And as I mentioned, the sheriff is here, Larry Brinker is here, and we are happy to take any questions that you have. And we also have some 911 staff here that I want to thank for their hard work during this whole process. I'm happy to take any questions.
Anybody have a question? If any of the 911 operators, you're on the front lines of this, so if you'd like to come up and say anything, you're welcome to. Love to hear from you because, what challenges, what you like about working in there. I'd be glad to hear from you and what you want to say. Anybody want to say anything? Come on, you talk for a living on the phone. High stress situations. Let's see you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Copeland. I'm assistant supervisor on one of the day shifts. The first thing I'd like to say is thank you to Michelle. As she told you, she came and spoke to each one of us on a one-on-one basis and wanted to hear everything we had to say. And I think that was one of the things that we felt like wasn't happening, that our opinions weren't being expressed, that maybe some decisions were being made without kind of our having a say-so in them. And but yeah, that really does encompass everything. I want to say the training coordinator position would be huge for us. It's something that a lot of other agencies do have and utilize, and it's something that we have noticed even just the training improvements that we've made recently. We've tried to make it a lot better, and I feel like a lot of the new hires that we've had since we made those improvements have been substantially better starting out, and I think that they have a much higher chance of actually making it. So I think that that's very important to us as well.
Let me ask you, you're about, we're trying to hire more people, and there's desperate need, I guess, for help in that department. So, what would you do if you had to sell somebody to come and work at the 911 Operations Center?
To encourage someone to come work?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're a big family. One of the things that we say is that we almost spend more time with each other than we do with our own families. We work 12-hour shifts. We work the holidays together. We make tiny Thanksgiving dinners on a hot plate. So, sorry, I kind of touches on the facilities issue, but
yeah, you probably should have said that.
Sorry, but we're a big family, and some of my best friends I've met here, and I can't attest to how important it is that we as a community feel like we have our opinions matter, that decisions aren't just being made for us without anyone coming in and sitting down and looking at it and seeing what's going on and thinking about what we have to deal with and what we have to face. But I think to encourage someone to do it, it's very rewarding. It's extremely rewarding. There are some days that are very hard, there are some days that are stressful, but in the end you realize that you have made a difference in at least our community, if not further than that, whether or not you realize it.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else want to get up and do that? Any other revelations about hot plates, electric wires, anything like that? Okay, Sheriff, you got anything you would like to say?
Not really.
You're not up for election for 2 years, but come on up here anyways.
Not really, said no politician ever.
You know, anytime you get in front of a microphone, I think we have worked together really well. Michelle has, we talk weekly, several times. I think we all have realized that we had some issues with our agency not working with their agency. I think I might have hurt their feelings the last time I was up here. I apologize. They're a really good group of people. We have seen marked improvements in the call volume, the protocols, the things that Michelle has worked hard to put in place. As you see by evidence, in 3 months, 14% drop in response times. That's pretty impressive. And so we know we're moving in the right direction. And I think it's working. We have tried with our agency, tried to be more part of their agency and talk to them. We have had some very difficult calls, manhunts, and things that CCOM has been very active and did an excellent job for our agency and other law enforcement agencies. So I can see a marked improvement, and I think we're moving in the right direction.
Okay. Curtis, you or Larry want to come up and say anything?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Ms. Khalil, thank you for this opportunity. It's been quite a 3-month period. We've been able to assess, reassess, go through many different processes, and come up with a lot of good ideas, a lot of opportunities to work on. We've had the ability to work as a big group. That's something that was a big benefit. We've reaped some of those benefits, and I look forward to what we're able to do as we continue on in the future. And with your support, I believe that is going to be quite a bit that we can do. So thank you all, and I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions, Larry? All right, thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
So one more question. All the ones that were involved in this, are we better off than we were 3 months ago? Raise your hand. Just a few, no, there's not heads nodded, hands raised. So everybody feels better about it, and that's what we want to hear. I think that was what the goal was that we had, not to interfere or mess up something that you had going, but to actually make those improvements. And it sounds like that you have, and you all seem to agree that that's what's happened. Commissioner Helms?
Michelle and I have talked quite a bit, and about 6 weeks ago, I sat down on a meeting with the sheriff and local law enforcement, and the thing that amazed me at that was that the first time that meeting had occurred. And since that meeting, I think the sheriff just told us how much better things have gotten since the communication was there. I'd like to see, I'm being told that meeting hadn't occurred with fire departments yet, so I'd like to have a target on when those are going to take place, and EMS, so we can see like gains. I'm hearing real positive about the call takers and the work they're doing, and I think we've made a lot of progress, but I think we need to keep tracking to see if we're accomplishing this across the board. I mean, this board has said all along that emergency services was our most important issue.
Absolutely. And so just to clarify, we have groups that meet, user groups that are fire and EMS and law enforcement. we split that apart intentionally based on some conversations. Those have continued to happen with EMS and with fire. What we have not been able to do in the 90 days is bring in the fire chiefs themselves like we have law enforcement with the chiefs. And so we will be working now to identify a time that works for all the fire chiefs to do that, and kind of follow that same model for law enforcement. And I would say that I think that's a work in progress too, because we want to do what's right, what they want to do, not necessarily what we want to do. So I think that will morph into something that's more sustainable over time, based on what those users really want to see from us. And our meetings with EMS will continue. They already happen on a monthly basis.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
I just say one thing, and I appreciate everybody's time tonight and time over the past 90 days working on this. I appreciate hearing from staff that things are improved, and I appreciate seeing the numbers, and I appreciate hearing from the sheriff. But more importantly, I appreciate hearing from every one of you that are sitting here tonight, because clearly, if you tell me it's working, then I believe it's working. And if you'll pass on to your colleagues that we do appreciate what you do very much. You make our county a better place, and we thank you for the job that you do. As we continue down this road, don't be afraid to raise your hand if something's not working. Let's not let this get to the point that we're at 90 days ago. So please keep us informed, keep your management informed, and everybody will continue to be safe, and you'll have a rewarding position and career, and hopefully we can get you some folks recruited to help in your workload down there. So thank you all for what you do.
With that, would anybody like to make the motion to approve the manager's request?
So moved.
All right.
What's in your agenda item is actually, you probably need to go to the recommendation screen that you have up, because when this was written, we were still formulating all of the actions. So I would say that is the action that we're looking forward for this evening.
I make a motion we maintain 911 Communication Center under the county manager structure, approve one full-time equivalent, and add the following job classification, associated pay grade to the FY17 Union County Pay and Classification Plan for Training Coordinator pay grade 68, and approve 4 full-time equivalent telecommunicator positions to be utilized as overhires.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? None.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you, Michelle, for your hard work. Thank all of you. Okay, next we have appointments to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. And in this, I would like to make the board aware that my son Reagan is one of the applicants. There is no financial gain, so I will be voting on this issue, but just to make the board aware that my son is on this list. All right, Manager, would you like to give the...
In essence, the vacancies have been advertised and applications have been received. Those applications, I think, were sent to you under a separate email from the clerk. And the action we are looking for is for appointment of these individuals or alternate appointments that you all may have for the 8 positions that are identified.
We do need a quorum on this group regularly, and it has been difficult to meet the quorum sometimes. So these folks, there are 2 positions for children that go to or in school or young adults, and then there's other positions that are appointed in the community. And to keep a quorum coming to these meetings, it's very important that we get these folks in place.
Make a motion we approve the 8 individuals identified for appointment to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, now we have county manager's comments.
My only comments this evening is I just want to thank Michelle Lancaster for the work that she has done on 911. She really has worked very hard on this. It was a team effort with emergency services and the 911 staff. And I appreciate the board when this issue first came up and allowing the opportunity for it to be studied so that we could come up with the best solution possible. So thank you.
Jerry Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you bother to listen to the radio, watch TV, read the newspaper, or on social media, or whatever, I'm sure you know the spin is underway with regard to the upcoming election. Certainly to ad infinitum, I do believe, but I've already expressed my opinion and concerns with respect to some of the bonds with regard to timeliness and forethought. It's in the hands of the voters now, and my only interest is to encourage fact-finding and transparency. Jeff, I want to thank you again for your presentation and that information, and that is in hopes that the voters will make an informed decision. So I thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Richard Helms.
I want to thank Jeff for clarifying some questions tonight. That was very, very well done. I appreciate it. Also, I'd like to make a point that Michelle, she demonstrated tonight the way she works in bringing teamwork together. But you know, she's also doing it over at DHS too. So I hope she doesn't burn out, because she's doing a great job, and that positive feedback comes from all the groups. So thank you for what you're doing, Michelle.
She just tells me to keep it coming. So I'm going to continue to do that until she says stop.
Commissioner Nance Simpson.
And no comments.
Vice Chairman Frank Akins.
I just appreciate all the work that staff has done. Appreciate the sheriff for your input on that. Appreciate that. I know this was a complex situation that everybody jumped in and took over, and I believe we've got a solid fix in place, and I appreciate that. Also, thank you, Jeff, for clarifying. I think Commissioner Jerry Simpson and I have been on the record of our stance on the bonds, and I appreciate the opportunity for you to present the facts to the voters, and I too implore the voters to go and make informed decisions on what they're voting for and what implications will come as a result of that vote. So with that, I wish everyone a good evening.
And you know, we had a couple of examples here tonight of how something that our new superintendent of the schools, Dr. Houlihan, we had a discussion a few weeks ago, and I think the county manager had an opportunity to meet with him today, and I'm very excited about the opportunity to work with him in the future. As I told him in that first meeting, we win together or we lose together. And that's something that our board, I think, has taken on the last couple of years. We look at things, and if we disagree respectfully. When we had this issue come up with 911, there was a lot of disagreements on how things should be done, and it's been worked out. It sounds like people have come together. We are a good community. We are a very smart community, and we can do great things. And we win together or we lose together. And let's just keep that in mind and keep working toward better things for our kids, better things for our adults, and better things for our community. The bond has been mentioned several times tonight. Whether the bond passes or not, we will get these things done. There will be things that we have to go through and plan with the school board. So a lot of people are concerned what kind of effect this will have. I will say this: no matter what happens, if it fails, we'll work it out. If it passes, we'll work it out. We'll make it work. We're required to work with the school system, and we should work with the school system and finding ways to save money and protect the taxpayers. One last comment. Today is my dad's birthday, so I wish him a very happy birthday. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.